this is Talk About Suffering. This is an old traditional song. I first heard it on an album with Tony Rice and the Skaggs, but I've also heard it when Ricky Skaggs did a thing up at Raw. But I loved it. So here we go. I bet she's going to come in here and just be surprised. We're all waiting for you. She turns and runs. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Bowling Green, Kentucky. That's right, yeah. Here we go. Talk about suffering here below, and let's keep loving Jesus. Talk about suffering here below, and let's keep following Jesus. The gospel train is coming. Now don't you want to go and leave this world of sorrow and troubles here below? Oh, can't you hear it, Father? And don't you want to go and leave this world of sorrow and troubles here below? Talk about suffering here below, and let's keep loving Jesus. Talk about suffering here below, and let's keep following Jesus. Oh, can't you hear it, Mother? And don't you want to go and leave this world of sorrow and troubles here below? Talk about suffering here below, and let's keep loving Jesus. Talk about suffering here below, and let's keep following Jesus. Oh, can't you hear it, brother? And don't you want to go and leave this world of sorrow and troubles here below? The gospel train is coming. Now don't you want to go and leave this world of sorrow and troubles here below?
Thank you. Welcome to this gathering hosted by the Unitarian Universalist Church of Bowling Green, whether you are here in person or online. We are so glad that you are joining us. My name is John Foreman, and I will be your service associate today. Please set your cell phones to silent so that we can be fully present with one another. And with that, may we learn together. We are a welcoming congregation. Whoever you are, however you identify, wherever you come from, and whoever you love, you are welcome here. Our Sunday services are different each week so that we can honor and learn from a wide array of traditions and beliefs. Today, our speaker is James Miller, who will be speaking on resurrection and the skeptical mystic. For Unitarian Universalists, the flaming chalice is a symbol of the light of learning and the love of our community. As our congregation's chalice is lit, we invite you to light your own chalice at home. This morning, our chalice will be lit by Derek Taylor. For those of you who are unfamiliar, the chalice was started in World War II. It's a tradition for congregations around the world. Looks like I got a little bit out of order, but we'll recover. Please join, since we lit the chalice, let's go ahead and sing hymn number 362, Rise Up, O Flame. Rise up, O flame, thy glory shows to us beauty, vision, and joy. Well, I say we got out of order. So are we singing a hymn together now?
I think we are.
Yeah, talk about suffering?
No. The hymn that we're going to sing is going to be We Give Thanks.
Okay.
There could be a reading.
There's a reading.
Yeah, reading first. James, I am so sorry I got off the line.
So today I'm going to be talking a little bit about the Eastern churches. I'm going to be talking about the Eastern churches' traditions, and for this reading, I'm going to read it in that style, in that tradition, so I'll be intoning it. So you'll forgive me if I sing a little out of key. Okay. Now Thomas, known as Didymus, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, We have seen the Lord. But he said unto them, Unless I see the nail marks in his hands, and put my finger where the nails were, and put my hands into his side, I will not believe. A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Through the doors were locked. Jesus came and stood among them and said, Peace be with you. Then he said to Thomas, Put your finger here, see my hands. Reach out your hands and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe. Thomas said to him, My Lord and my God. When Jesus told him, Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed.
And now we have our opening hymn. We give thanks. It's should be number 1010 in the teal hymnal, and the words should also be on the screen.
Please rise as you will.
And now I invite you to join with me in a unison reading, the UUCBG Covenant. We promise to live in harmony and civility with awareness, tolerance, acceptance, and celebration of our diversity. We commit ourselves to enthusiastic support of our fellowship and of the Unitarian Universalist tradition through our individual gifts and talents. Thank you. And at this time, we will sing out the children. Do we have any today? Yes. Okay. For meditation, reflection, and prayer. The singing bowl will lead us into silence. After the silence, you're invited to join in the song Spirit of Life, which is the hymnal number 123. The words will be on the screen. And I now invite James back up to the stage to do the responsive reading. We don't know what happened.
Our responsive reading today is We Don't Know What Happened by Daniel Budd. It comes to us from the UUA Worship Web, and so it's not in your hymnals, but please read the parts in italic on the display on the wall. Oh, you'll get there. We're not sure what happened, but we know what it's like when someone appears whose message we feel offers hope, who inspires us with new ways of living.
We know what it's like when they fall short of our expectations, or worse, when they are let down by the forces of hate and hatred.
We're not sure what happened, but we know what it's like when someone has grown profoundly into our lives who seems as much a part of our living as our own breathing.
We know what it's like when death takes them from us, perhaps prematurely, and the empty place now in our souls is much like an empty tomb.
We are not sure what happened, but we know what it's like to feel sorrow and loss, despair and grief. We know the waves of tears and the thoughts of the past which flow through us.
We know that memories and stories begin to feel emptiness. Our lives are short up of the different presence which will live with us all our lives.
We are not sure what happened, but we know what it's like to realize, to have it dawn upon us, that what we have known and loved lives on with us and within us forever, a part of who we are.
We know that somehow in our hearts and souls, resurrection is real, not that of the body, but of the spirit, a spirit renewed, even reborn, in the midst of our lives and our living.
We're not sure what happened, but we know there is a difficult hope, a faith, that through whatever sorrow or grief we are feeling, there is also a growing sense of grace and gratitude, of joy and thanksgiving, in the mysterious and abiding astonishment of being human.
And James, I would like to invite you back to the stage as soon as you catch your breath to share with us the message. As was stated earlier, Unitarian Universalists have a wide array of beliefs, and the speakers at our Sunday services come from many traditions. James Miller is a member of this congregation and an aspirant for Unitarian Universalist Ministerial Fellowship. He is a high school social studies teacher, adjunct instructor of folk studies at Western Kentucky University, a perpetual student. He holds undergraduate degrees in biblical studies and philosophies and master's degrees in folk studies and theological studies, as well as a graduate certificate in gender and women's studies. James enjoys volunteering, powerlifting, skating, and the occasional vacation.
Thank you. So today it's Easter in the West. My background is the Eastern tradition, and I'll be sharing a little bit of that with you today. This year, they will not have Easter until May 5th. We associate Easter with new life and new beginnings, and those are well and good, and I think that's appropriate. But I want to make an attempt to view the resurrection as a more mystical experience. And what I want to talk about is how this is celebrated in another tradition, one that can help us kind of, through those contrasts, find some things that might be helpful. The Eastern Church is a mystical tradition. So it's going to be a little bit different in the way it comes and approaches something like resurrection. So the resurrection today, I think, very often is kind of isolated. When we talk about Easter, It's celebrated in some isolation. Sometimes we will associate it with something like Good Friday, but I don't think that gives us the full sense of what it is, the full view. I think it limits our view. And like a lot of other commercialized celebrations, parts of it are culturally ubiquitous, and often the more nuanced lessons are kind of put to the side, especially when we're selling bunnies and eggs, pastel colors, uncomfortable shoes, things of that nature. It's obviously more than that, but it's easy to kind of lose that sense. So I just want to kind of give some context to broaden that for us a little bit. So especially in liturgical forms of Christianity, Easter, or the resurrection, or Pascha, as I'll tend to want to refer to it, is a part of a larger set of liturgical celebrations and observations. Okay? So in the Eastern Church, by the time you get to Easter, that week you've done about 40 hours of services, if you've gone to them all. You won't go to them all right, if you have. The following weeks are also built upon this. So there's weeks and weeks that are helping to give this whole thing kind of some context. So I think for today, we're not going to go through all of those, thankfully. Okay, so I think just getting through Friday and Saturday, and maybe one from the following week, will help us a bit. So Holy Friday, I tend to call it Holy Friday. You often hear it as Good Friday. For a couple of reasons, I don't really like that term. One, I have an Eastern background, and I'm biased, and that's just going to be, that's just the case. I tend to be used to that. I also have a hard time calling it good because it's associated with the crucifixion, and it's hard for me to see that violence as a good thing. Okay. No matter its kind of proposed redemptive quality. But given what I think Friday actually represents, loss, I think holy is a good term. Often we place that redemptive part on Friday, and I don't think it goes there. I think Good Friday or Holy Friday, it represented a problem in the narrative for those who followed Jesus. Okay? Jesus was crucified. And what I think is important to understand is that for the people there, at least in this narrative, it wasn't just a man who died. It was their teacher. It was their friend. It was a movement. The understanding of their world. Their understanding how justice was going to unfold and be obtained. It's all coming crashing down. And maybe even some doctrines, how they understood God. It all kind of came to an end. And I think we can kind of sympathize with this. For us, this could be a complete shift in a faith. It could be our deconstruction, which most of us have experienced and all will at some point, I think. It can be experienced when our movements seem to be futile, when our causes seem to be vanquished, death, tragedy. And I think for the disciples, it was actually kind of all of these, right? So at the point of this kind of existential loss, it can be very tempting to try to recover it in some way, right? So some of these Good Friday narratives are already kind of trying to give you the answer. The Eastern tradition is not going to do that. Liturgically, we are not looking at Pascha yet in the Eastern tradition on Holy Friday. When we get to that service, after hours of other services, we've passed through this crucifixion event. These have been replayed liturgically. There is a funeral bier in the middle of the church. There is a symbolic body upon it, and we are left at the point of the void of meaning. The hymns are reflecting not joy yet, futility and contradictions. Hymns that state things like, "He who hung the sky now hangs from a tree." Difficult contradictions. The people, for the rest of this night, until Saturday morning, will read the Lamentations or the Psalms. They will come to this funeral bier, and in succession, they will read the Psalms, and they will take turns nursing this grief until morning. They come to the funeral bier, the symbol of loss. That becomes the central symbol throughout this week. Not the cross, not an empty tomb, a tomb full. It's our grief. It's our loss. And I think this is important. The disciples did not have a resurrection to look forward to. And very often in our loss, we cannot imagine what's coming. It's not even in our imagination yet of what could be. So there's a journey through this time of loss. And there's little expectation that it'll end. Again, a lot of these Good Friday narratives I hear tend to want to immediately give us that hope. The East is not going to do that. There's actually a seemingly lack of support. When you get into the church, symbols of hope have been covered or removed. It's dark. It's quiet. And it's all night. So when I was younger, I could get up fill up these 2:30 a.m. slots. Okay, we would go in, and the stillness was almost unsettling. There's a sense of longing for resolution that's not coming. We're left to lament. Again, not because we need to suffer, right? Because we need to seek and find. Church is trying not to tempt us to get to that resolution too early, or one that's maybe not real. So this captures the sense of mystical liturgy. So what do I mean by that? Well, I don't want to nail this down to a dogmatic definition that would kind of be opposed to the spirit of the mystical. But the idea is that we take a position as a mystic that the truth, whatever that is something to be experienced and danced with or sat with, rather than to be found and domesticated. We'll find what is real not by assent to ideas, but by wrestling with what we find. And it might wrestle back. Most often it does. It's not easy. So what's difficult to put into words might need to be left as a mystery, as an encounter. And as much as I think we're kind of attracted to that term, right, that encounter, it's difficult. We don't often like these uncomfortable, unstable, open spaces, right? We want something to hold on to. The mystical tradition is going to hold back on that a little bit for us, right, to teach us. It's a bit like exercise, right? I like it in theory, right? But doing it is a whole new kind of issue, right? So after we've come to this, these Lamentations are read all the way up to the Saturday morning service, which is a bit more of the focus of the redemptive narrative. So this is where Christ descends into Hades, goes into hell, and frees everything. It's not substitutionary, it's participatory. This descent into the unknown, to the transformative space, is that place where joy starts. Not resurrection yet. That's not quite there yet. Jesus descends in order to bring the divine into places that are awaiting justice, awaiting presence. Not that the divine presence isn't actually there, especially in the Eastern thought. It's often hard to see. It's hard to connect with, especially in the midst of our loss. It's on Saturday that we start to get these symbols of broken chains, freed captives, persons being healed. The priest will run around the church throwing bay leaves, and as we stomp and walk and crack on them, they are the broken chains. The lesson here is that entering into these spaces of loss and need without preconceived notions, there we might find those aspects of joy, seeds of caring, justice, connection. When we leave behind, when we grieve the loss and let it be and move into these spaces. So we find them as we descend, and we descend with others. So it's not in the resolution that we find the joy, at least as far as this liturgy is concerned. Okay. The joy is there in the breaking of the doors, the spreading of the light, the act of bringing justice, the wrestling with what it means and how we're going to enact it. That process. And all the while feeling like we're not sure how it's going to turn out. We're not sure. We're not given that. Again, there's a lot more I could say about this service and these services, but I think it's important to know that the funeral bearer is still the focus. It's still in the middle. It's still the thing we're looking at. And then comes Pascha, are the resurrectional service. And before this is something called the Paschal Rush, and it is a process getting ready for this resurrectional service is about to happen. That funeral bier is borne upon the shoulders, and it is processed. And in order to enter into the resurrectional service, you go under it into the doors. There's no other way into the resurrectional service but through the funeral bier. And that's on purpose. Very often there's not a good way to that resurrection other than going through. And we're not alone. Everyone comes with us. Right? The gates have been broken, right? Because of our presence, because we have come together. So that all seems great. So, the next week, the East celebrates Thomas. The week after all of this is the Sunday of Thomas. Now, we often call him what? Doubting Thomas. Anathema. In the East, he's believing Thomas. Right? They don't see that as a problem. He's not doubting Thomas. People take Thomas as their patron saint. Good friends of mine that are quite skeptical have taken him unironically as their patron saint. He's believing Thomas, but I think he was a skeptic. So there's a writer, Addison Hodges Hart, and I read often. His work kind of blends liturgical Christianity, Zen, with a critical eye and a penchant for the mystical and earth, a combination I resonate with. And he says this that I like. One can only be skeptical about those things that one cares enough about to scrutinize. That's it. You can't actually be critical unless you care enough. So, and he kind of defines this idea of being skeptical as the act of looking hard at things for the purpose of discovering and understanding what may or may not be true about them. And that's hard to do. We have a lot of sacred cows, right? Sacred narratives that keep us sometimes out of those questioning spaces. And the skeptic is going to continually move into those and question them. Not to question for questioning's sake, because they care. Because it's real. It's something that needs to be done. So the skeptics are going to suspend that judgment or accept an answer or an idea even if it's attractive. What we see in Thomas is that he resists that message. The disciples come to him, hey, guess what? Jesus is alive. And I often think, what are the disciples actually thinking in that moment? Right? Jesus is back. Does that mean that all those things that they lost are back? That we can kind of go about things like it never happened? Right? Can we get the way that it was? For most of us, we know that's not true. Right? Once there's loss and change, it's changed. And I think Thomas knows that too. Right? He resists that narrative. It's not because it was unbelievable, I don't think. It's because he actually took it quite seriously. He wants to find not a mythology, but truth. Not comfort, but peace. And not stability, but actual justice. And he holds out for the mystical heart of the matter. He holds out for an encounter. He's looking for the nails, right? He's not looking for the narrative that was lost, but the reality that has moved through the experience. He's not looking for the king triumphant over his oppressor. He's looking for his teacher, the sacred, his friend. Okay? It was really lost, and there's something else here now. He wants to encounter that, and I think that's why he's believing Thomas, because he believes. So he believes enough to question it. So this idea sometimes, Thomas is read as the idea that we need a blind faith, right? That we need a faith that will always see and understand this new life or resurrection that's here and that's coming, to expect it even. I think we get tempted to an unseeing faith or a blind faith. So I don't think there's a rebuke of Thomas here. I think it's just a warning. Thomas gets to see me. Not everyone will see what's coming. Not everyone will actually get to see their resolution in that way. Sometimes we actually feel guilty for Friday and Saturday. We feel guilty for feeling this loss, for sitting with it, for having it. And there are many well-meaning phrases to keep others from feeling it too. We guilt Thomas. We all understood he was doubting Thomas, right? And I think we do that to each other a little bit. It's common. The disciples wanted Thomas to share the enthusiasm, right? He's back. It's all good. He's, no, right? He doesn't want that. It's not always helpful. There are a few temptations along the way, and I think the liturgical tradition of the East is trying to push us away from those. And there's plenty of them. I could go on, but one would be that we want to get to Pascha, we want to get the resurrection without the Holy Saturday, without the Holy Friday, without the lament. We want to reanimate what we lost. We want to hold on to it. We want to go back to it. It was comfortable. It was great, right? But it's gone now. We need to let go and move into those unstable, liminal, and transformative spaces, not alone, not without support, and not wholeheartedly. So we have plenty of things that end, relationships, movements, ideologies, faiths, and they need to be mourned and laid down, that new space for that new thing found and experienced. Another temptation is to make sense of something when there is none, right? Thomas doesn't really make sense of it. He says, I just want to have the experience. He doesn't ask, well, how do you know? Give me the experience. Let's move into that. We're not going to make sense of it. And the thing is like, a lot of tragedies just don't make sense. And maybe they can't. And to move through that, we have to not be tempted to demand that. Good Friday can be kind of a jump over. So what I think the resurrection could point us to is being skeptical of the easy answers, the things that try to reconstitute what we lost, reconstitute that without the full journey. Peter Rollins is a thinker that I like, and he says two things can happen when we hit that loss, especially when it's about our ideas, is that we can either go into apologetics or distractions. We can either do the hoop jumps to try to make it all okay again, or we can distract ourselves. We can move into these other places. But Thomas doesn't do that. He didn't trade his current journey for comfort, for an easy answer. He didn't trade it to go back to the way things were, which is tempting but not possible. So I think something often forgotten when we talk about resurrection, that I think we see in Thomas, is that resurrection isn't actually the point, right? It's the evidence of a miracle and a change. It's what happened Friday and Saturday. It's the evidence of that, right? Flowers are the same way. We don't know when we plant flowers that they're going to arise, right? But that's the process. They die, the seed goes in the ground, and we hope that it comes back up. That's our plan, but we don't know that. There's a temptation to get to the answer for what we see as justice before we actually descend into the depth of the issue with those who suffer. It's the skeptic who withholds that resolution long enough to understand. So we actually find new life. We actually find justice. Not something that's a bit more empty. So resurrection for the skeptical mystic is not about a man coming back from the dead. It's about seeing the fruits of healing in a process that works through the full journey. And like Thomas, to question the easy solutions, the returns to mythologies we've lost, the distractions, and seeks a truly redemptive space. There are a lot of movements that will short-circuit that process. Toxic positivity, well-meaning phrases. It tries to let us bypass that. Or, again, bring up that old thing almost like a zombie, right? It's there, but it's not real. It's not alive. It's not living with our presence in our actual today moment. So, the narrative, I think, invites us to be skeptical but open to the experience, the depth of healing and the depth of justice. and to beauty, and to move beyond the mythologies that often undergird things like injustice and make things easy to live with. Sometimes we just need to be uncomfortable. Not that that's a place we should stay, not that it's a place that we should invite suffering for. That's the curse and the blessing of the skeptic, the place of unknowing and the questioning, which is a part of finding that real experience of truth and justice and healing. The fact that resurrection is part of a larger journey. It's not just the one thing. It's a process. So I think, a lesson is that we do not, in fact, get our meaning back. Thomas knows we do not get our meaning back. Another one is born. The flowers this year are not the flowers last year. We don't think about that sometimes. It's not the same one. It's not really a happily ever after. And again, prior to Holy Week, Lazarus Saturday is celebrated. This is where Jesus resurrects Lazarus, and Lazarus will eventually die again. And that's okay. The story moves on. So again, I tend to bristle the idea that after these tragedies there will be a happily ever after, that we can contain their meaning, the sense of deep tragedy and loss. And I'm skeptical, not because I don't want or think we should be comforted or there should be a birth of something new. It's because it's so very important. It's sacred to us. We want to be sure it's real. And I think we can follow believing Thomas in moving toward that embodied experience. Thank you.
Thank you, James. So after the service, will you be available? Okay, for Q&A and possibly fitting some more pieces of the puzzle together, because I think I'm with a room of skeptics by nature. So thank you. Thank you, James. As our music crew assembles, I invite you to consider an offering. If I can find the page. Here we go. This congregation and the work we do is supported by the voluntary generosity of all who contribute. The offering is a sacrament of the free church. You may place your donation in the plate as it comes around, or whenever we get the screen up, there'll be a couple QR codes. You can donate that way or mail checks into the office here on Nashville Road. As we enjoy the music, the offering will be given and received in grateful appreciation of the shared hopes and values.
At the welcome table, sit at the welcome table one of these days.
We thank you for these gifts. May we use them wisely in the service of our congregation and our community. So now we should have some community news. So as you can see, we have Tech Tuesdays. Please consider this so that we have backup. We've got a couple people that create the magic. Matt is back there creating the magic today. But you too can be one of those people. And it's on Zoom, and I'll let you check other bulletin boards for the details. Okay, I'm having trouble. What's the title of this one? Oh, okay. Watch Party of Healing Relationships with the Natural World by Robin Wall. And the time is 12:30. Okay. It'll be downstairs in the fellowship hall. Check that out. Okay, and circle suppers are in full swing. Thank you for all who are hosting and all of you who are participating. And don't worry, if you've missed out for this spring, keep it in mind. It's a great way to get to know each other. And small groups, there's some being planned. We've gone through that the last couple weeks, and there's a number of people. If you're curious about it, just ask and we'll get you hooked up. Next Sunday, usefulness of an empty pot, and that's Janine. Yay, our very own Janine. Okay. Okay, I'd like to also invite you to the fellowship hall. After the service, there'll be some refreshments, and we can socialize a little bit and have Q&A with James. I'd also like to invite you, if you have questions about membership, if you have questions about Unitarian Universalism or about joining this congregation, please speak with a member of our membership team. Have we got anybody here today? Yes, thank you for that. Or our board president, Roxanne, and she's anchoring the back pew, along with some others. And you can also email president@uubgky.org. And there's information in the monthly newsletter. Check that out if you don't have access to it. I think there's a sign-up sheet out there. And then there's bulletin boards, and we have a website and Facebook page. Encourage you to check those out frequently because things are happening and things change. And with that, I believe we are to the last hymn? Yes, we are. When the Spirit says, do.
Number 1024, the teal hymnal. We have one verse that will be up on the screen, but what we're going to do is we're going to do, and then we're going to sing, and this is for Fred, we're going to dance, and then we're going to do at the end. So what you do is you replace do, the second time we sing, the third time we dance, and then the fourth time we come back to do and finish the song. Please stand as you are willing or able.
Spirit says do. You got to do when the Spirit says got to sing when the Spirit says sing. When the Spirit says sing, you got to sing, oh Lord. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. 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 You got to dance when the Spirit says dance. You got to dance when the Spirit says dance. When the Spirit says dance, you got to dance, oh Lord. You got to dance when the Spirit says dance. 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 Do. You got to do when the Spirit says do. You got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you got to do, oh Lord. You got to do when the Spirit says do. 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 Spirit says do.
This time I'd like to invite James up for the final reading.
This is by Ellen Cooper. Every year, the same conundrum. How do we find our way into Easter when for us, the most important part of Jesus of Nazareth is his teaching, rather than his death? Like many traditional holidays, it must have some meaning to us beyond its commercial trappings. But what is its meaning exactly? What are we to make of the death of one Jewish teacher 2 millennia ago in a world where we hear daily of violence, death, and injustice? When I left my Christian upbringing, the first thing I wholeheartedly threw out the window was the cross. I kept the bunny, the eggs, the chocolate, but the whole death and resurrection thing was right out. Many years later, I reluctantly let little bits of it back in, particularly around resurrection and rebirth. It was an easy metaphor to embrace for a holiday that in many places ushers in springtime. But it is only in very recent years that the whole story has found, again, a place in my spirituality, that Easter takes on a deeper meaning than it ever did when I was a child. No alleluias until Easter, my daughter told me solemnly. Shh, the alleluias are sleeping. She pointed to the small raised garden bed being warmed by the spring sun, where I could see the sprouts of trumpet lilies pushing up through the soft dirt. Before Easter, she summed up, no alleluias. After Easter, alleluias again. Of course, perhaps the simplest, most elegant explanation of Easter I have ever heard, without all the complicated and problematic substitutionary atonement theology, without all the irrationalism of missing bodies or visitations from the dead. This is Easter stripped down to its most central, heart of hearts message. We have alleluias in our lives, moments of triumph and wonder, of insight and rebirth. These are moments of transformation when our way of being in the world is fundamentally changed, strengthened, deepened, when we feel more whole, more connected, the exuberant and joyful. Alleluia is a good way to think of these moments. But as my Christian colleagues are fond of saying, you can't get to Easter without Good Friday. The story of resurrection cannot go forward without a death. Sometimes the most profound transformations are the ones that emerge out of the deaths that we face in our lives. It may be a literal death, the hole left in your life when a beloved one has gone, and you feel unmade by the loss. It may be one of 1,000 lesser losses. The loss of a job or a friendship, the death of a marriage or partnership, change in a physical or mental ability, even the death of a long-held dream. These places of grief are barren places in our life, God-forsaken places that teach us sorrow and suffering and lamentation. But feeling forsaken is not the same as being forsaken. The story of Easter tells us that death doesn't win. Love wins. Like the saplings that sprout among the ruins of a forest fire, like the phoenix who is born from its own ashes, like the crocus that pokes through the snow each spring, like the banana tree, which dies but lives on in its children, hope rises. Hope rises up even in the face of death. Even in our wilderness, we are never completely lost.
Now we bid farewell to those who have joined us online. We hope you found this service meaningful, and we invite you to join us again, either in person or online. Be well and go in peace.